Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Sunday morning talk within the Nine-Sided Circle, aka our other talk. But instead of doing two talks in one Sunday like we have been for quite some time, we are going gentler on ourselves so we can offer you even better stuff. So we are meeting at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time every third Sunday of each month. So this is our alternative time for folks who can't join us on Zoom at our usual time each week on Sundays at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time. So without further ado, I am your host, Noor Kyle.
And I am her faithful sidekick, Mushtaq Ali.
Yes, and we are so glad you are here. I love these morning talks because we get such an amazing and eclectic group of enthusiastic people, which is always wonderful to experience. And plus, those of you who are watching on YouTube, welcome to you too. Thanks for being here. And to all of you, if you would love to support our work, and we hope that you would, you can subscribe to our channel if you want to keep up with what we're doing. Like this video if you enjoy it. Hopefully, it'll be interesting
I
today.
like it even if you hate it.
Yeah, but this is a topic people have been requesting for years, and we are finally, in a place where we feel like it's up in the roster for us to discuss. And lastly, leave a comment if you find something that's interesting to you, good or bad. I mean, as long as it's intellectually honest, we are happy to entertain all comments and questions. And thank you so much for participating in everything that we do, those of you who continue to do so. Also, you can donate, of course. We have links for that on our PayPal and our Stripe accounts because that allows us to continue doing the work that we do. That sustains us, that helps us pay the bills, and it helps us keep going. It helps us keep rolling. You can also join our Facebook group, and as always, I encourage people to join our email list just in case things get crazy over on the social media front. That way, you can always stay in touch, and you'll know how to reach out to us that way. So, without further ado, if you don't have anything to add, Mushtaq.
Nah, you said it all.
Yeah. All of the links for all of these things will be in the description for this video.
And probably links for other things. You never know.
Oh yeah, there are other things in there. Some things you might be interested in, so take a look. Okay, so for our topic, we have something, like I said, that has been up for due for discussion for quite some time. So, digesting reality, Gurdjieff's three foods, quote unquote. And then we're going to talk about those things from the Sufi perspective, or we're going to talk about some Sufi, not quite corollaries, but antecedents, things that came before.
Yeah, and given where Gurdjieff lived and the things that he did, um, that colored how he perceived this.
Yeah.
So, uh,
For us, that
as
seems undeniable.
yeah, as we like to say, Gurdjieff cribbed all of his best stuff from the Sufis. So, such is life.
Such is life, and as so many of us do. We're all building on each other's ideas and hopefully to everyone's benefit. That's the idea, anyway. So, where shall we begin, Mushtaq?
Well, let's begin with talking about Gurdjieff's model of the three-storied food factory.
Hmm.
This is how he imagined things, that uh, the absorption of food, digestion, happened at three levels. At the bottom story of the food factory, you have food, regular food, the stuff that you find on your dinner table or at McDonald's or wherever. Uh, then the next story gives the next layer of food, which is breath. Just as shawarma is food for the body, breath is food for the blood, for the lungs, for it stokes the fires that allow the cells to burn energy. And this makes sense to most people. But then we have the third story of the food factory, which Gurdjieff called impressions. Impressions are what happens when you perceive the world from the awake state. I want you to think, all of you, think of some event in your life that you remember very, very clearly, preferably a good one. We don't need to go into any kind of weird trauma stuff, but a happy memory. And notice how clear it is. Gurdjieff would say that memory is so clear because you were awake at the moment that you took the impressions that formed that memory. And he would suggest that you need that just as much as you need to eat your vegetables. You need those impressions just as much as you need to breathe. Does this kind of make sense?
Yeah, I'd say people are coming along. Any questions about that so far? Okay.
Now, in order for these digestion to happen, sama. In order for these digestions to happen, Gurdjieff posits that you must have the first and second conscious shocks. So the first conscious shock, it's easy. This is be awake. For your food to digest, you want to be awake to the eating of it. For your breath to empower you, you want to be awake to your breath. And the second conscious shock is a bit harder because it includes the intelligent bearing and transformation of emotional reactivity. Think of heat converted into light instead of an email that you will regret later. So all emotion create, you can use the model of all emotions create heat. Heat is basically waste energy, but it can be used to create other kinds of energy, right? Apply heat to water, run it through a turbine, you get electricity.
Yeah, you can use any emotion as fuel.
Yeah.
I am reluctant to call anything positive or negative emotion
Yeah.
wise.
That was one area where we profoundly disagree with Mr. Gurdjieff,
Yeah.
who insisted upon the suppression of negative emotion, or what he called negative emotion. Uh, I think if he had his way, everybody would be happy, happy, joy, joy, dancing all the time.
I'm good. I don't know about you guys, but I don't need that
Yeah.
kind of uh choking out of the things that come up moment to moment.
So you need to understand that what makes an emotion positive or negative is not the feeling, but what you do with it.
Absolutely. 100%
So if
agreement
you
on that.
feel love for somebody and it turns you into a stalker, that's negative. If you feel anger and you use the heat of that anger to um, address a problem in a proactive way, that's positive. If you feel grief, you can either hold on to it and be miserable for the rest of your life, or you can experience the profound loss that grief comes from and allow that to um, further your own path. So it's not the emotion, it is the behaviors that the emotion engenders and how awake you are to the emotion. Does this make sense so far?
Yes.
So, the first level, food, or as I like to say, your lunch has a spiritual life. We will go where forks fear to tread. We eat. Things happen. Miracles occur beneath the dignity of our notice. In Gurdjieff's view, the digestion of ordinary food is the most automatic octave of these three octaves of digestion. And it will go on whether you complete it or not. Although completing the octave while chewing is aesthetically pleasing and may reduce embarrassing incidents with parsley or beans.
Yes. Whether you contemplate it or not. Yes. Yeah. So basically, whether you're aware of it or not, whether you're thinking about it or not, it will continue on. Yes.
So the first food doesn't get upgraded in the way that self-help books promise. You cannot biohack your lunch into enlightenment any more than you can power pose your way into sainthood. However, you can relate to food, how you relate to food matters. Classic Sufi adab, for instance, the etiquette of eating uh, and in obtaining the food aims to keep the fuel clean and the mind unhijacked by a craving. Moderation, right measure, gratitude before the first bite. These things set the tone. And we'll be speaking more about that later. We're going to do this in two parts. We're going to talk about Gurdjieff mostly first, and then look at how the Sufis do it.
Mhm.
And this is not because you choose to eat quinoa over rice, uh, but because the organism notices when we stop behaving like raccoons at a picnic. And the sad, but sadder and even sadder truth is most people, most of the time, eat completely unconsciously. We've all been guilty of that. In the West, we even turned it into a product. Back in the 50s, somebody developed, Swanson's, I think it was, developed the TV dinner.
Yeah.
Imagine this aluminum tray with separate little cubbies for the food that you could heat up in the oven, and then it would go on a special tray called a TV dinner tray that sat in front of you, little rickety thing, and you would eat these dinners while watching television, so you wouldn't miss your favorite show. And aside from the fact that the food was,
Garbage.
yeah, aside from the fact that the food was terrible. I mean, some of the stuff in there will put you off of certain foods for the rest of your life, like peas. TV,
Salisbury steak.
yeah, and mashed potatoes. Yeah, it was terrible. But it was a thrilling thing. In 1958, let me tell you, the TV dinner was like this wow experience for Americans, at least. And it taught us to eat completely unconsciously. So, most of the time, when a family eats or a group eats, they eat in a they eat in a circle or an oblong or even a rectangle. But this turned that from a circle where everybody was interacting with everybody into a line where everybody was facing a machine that was feeding them daily propaganda. And so we have been trained to eat unconsciously, at least here in America, probably most of the West. So the second level, air, breathing, but you make it interesting. Air is the second food. And you'll be relieved to know that your body is breathing right now without a motivational speaker. Yet Mr. Gurdjieff says that the octave doesn't complete itself without help. Enter attention. Breath becomes not a performance, but a carrier of steadiness. In several Sufi lineages, you will meet tiny phrases like hosh-dar-dam, be mindful in every breath. If
I've
that
done
sounds,
videos about that. Yes.
yeah, if that sounds like a platitude, note the note the engineering, in breath, out breath, with a taste of presence. Think of it as the world's smallest file sync operation between the body and attention. So when you breathe consciously, you activate your attention. And that actually begins to apply a shock to the first food. If you are breathing consciously, Gurdjieff's theory was that you will digest your first food better. Is this kind of making sense so far?
Any questions so far? Comments? Experiences with this even? Yeah. Well,
When Mushtaq was talking about eating food unconsciously, it just reminded me so much of Ramadan. The TV dinners that you were talking about um, made me sort of realize how, call it the machine, call it what you want, but they've selected what should be the most spiritual, the most advantageous time to to contemplate everything, and they've made it the most expensive TV production agenda of the year. So it's like they want to absolutely make sure that any time that humans may have for conscious awakening is completely taken over by TV. So it's in the Arab world, apparently we love Turkish soap operas and historical episodes, and they go in episode 500. I don't know how you can write a script of 500, but apparently that's a short one as well. Um, but everybody's breaking their fast and they're eating and they're fully being fed. It's to the degree now that you're talking, Mushtaq, I think they're more fed by what they're seeing than the food because they don't know when they finish their food. They don't know how much they've had. They don't know what they've drank. It's just I'm watching this and there it is. So it just that those TV dinners I think are still here.
Oh, yeah.
But they get expressed for us, at least for me, during that time. That's all I wanted to share.
And Asha has a thought.
Afsha, it's so good to have you here.
It's great to be here. I love it. I'm having a great time. I was just thinking about the practice of eating on the floor, sitting on the floor while eating, like the
Yeah.
sort of Asian Arab practice, the Japanese practice. And I wonder if that really helps with mindfulness, because the way that you sit, the way that you move, you have to be a bit more mindful, I would suspect.
Yeah. Funnily enough, we are going to talk about exactly that thing. So thanks for bringing that up. It's a good segue. All right. Any more thoughts?
I think we're ready to move forward. Hmm,
So the third level, impressions, the all-you-can-eat buffet of reality.
truly.
This is like the high drama, the third food. It arrives through all of our senses and our nervous system. And the system gets picky. The digestion of impressions does not proceed without the first conscious shock. This is a small but revolutionary act of receiving impressions while remembering yourself. Now, we have talked about self-remembering ad infinitum, ad nauseum on this channel. So I'm not going to delve into it, nor is not going to delve into it too much here.
Mm.
But it is the process of conscious awareness. Um,
Both of yourself and what your senses are bringing in
yeah,
for you to observe.
in this case, the self-remembering is both being aware of the external and the internal, and you being aware of all of it at the same
Yeah.
time.
Mm-hmm.
So that we talk about three attentions, or Gurdjieff talks about three attentions. We don't talk about it that way. But nevertheless, when you find yourself present, when you experience your own I, when you experience yourself as the seer looking at what is given to you, when your attention is both referential and reflexive at the same time, that's when you can take a real impression of reality. And when you do that, it gives you a certain energy. And you know that it gives you a certain energy because your amplitude is high enough that the impression of that you're taking in stays strong in memory. Mert.
Mushtaq, when I breathe, the air goes to my lungs, and then I breathe out the excess air. And when I eat, the food goes into my stomach and goes to my intestines, and I flush it the rest. So what happens with the impressions? Where does it go? And when we digest it, where does the excess impressions go?
Well, Gurdjieff says that the excess impressions, the leftovers, are used to coat the highest of the higher being bodies, which means absolutely nothing to me. Board makes the really useful observation: it can become art. So that's actually the best possible way to describe it. The byproduct of impressions can be creativity.
Can be. What else might it be? Oh, sorry, Mert, go ahead.
But it cannot be the leftover, can it be?
Sure it can. All of your leftovers are not leftovers.
Then it's gonna be a bad art.
No. So you eat your food. You expel the stuff that you didn't use.
Yeah, no
That
human eats it.
is fertilizer. The plants use it. You take a breath. You absorb oxygen. You expel carbon dioxide. That carbon dioxide is sucked up by the houseplants that you hopefully have around you.
The plant seems to use them all.
Yeah.
So why humans use the impression leftovers?
I would say it's more that it goes back into the environment.
Yeah, it goes back into the environment. So staying with the plant metaphor, you use your creativity to create a beautiful bonsai tree. Yeah, the old medical model of you take in food and expel waste is, I think, inaccurate. And it's inaccurate in several ways. It's easier to talk about breath. So, you're a physician. What happens if you have no carbon dioxide in your blood?
The oxygen cannot go into the blood.
Yes, the oxygen cannot go into the blood. It's called the Bohr effect, if I remember correctly. And it's an interesting thing because oxygen does not transfer from hemoglobin to the cells except in the presence of carbon dioxide. And yet we think of carbon dioxide as a waste product. But it's not. So you're losing weight. Where does the fat go that you're losing? How do you expel the fat from your body?
It becomes energy.
Yeah, and how do we expel that from our body?
We transfer the energy.
Yeah, Afsha has the right of it. Breath. We breathe out the remnants of the burning of fat. For the most part, some of it goes out through the kidneys, but most of it goes out through the breath. So I don't need to tell you that the human body is very complex, even in simple things like digestion. We eat some food, we pour some hydrochloric acid on the food, and then we suck out all of the vitamins, and it's nothing like that. So in the same way, the byproducts of impression are as useful. They are not waste products in the sense of some inert matter that has no function in the world. And Gurdjieff probably couldn't answer the question any better than I can, but that's why he suggested that you have these higher being bodies, and the byproduct of impressions coats the highest being body so it can last forever.
So Board says, this all just reminds me how important it is to think of the world and all of us as an interdependent, interconnected being. Absolutely. Everything feeds into and feeds from the system.
Yeah, the whole reciprocal maintenance thing.
Mm-hmm. And so even when I said, it's going back into the environment, like we are actually part of the environment, but I think you guys know what I meant. So this is a perspective shift that it's always good for us to try to hold in mind, even if it becomes difficult to communicate about it in everyday conversation. What Board's talking about is really the ultimate fact of the matter.
Yeah. And even for food digestion, back in the day, you had people who would go around and collect what was known as night soil, which is eh, crap. And they would take it out someplace and compost it. And that would go on the fields and act as a fertilizer. Mert,
Ustad, can I ask you a question?
of course.
What is the waste product of a plant?
The waste product of a plant is oxygen.
Yes, and we use oxygen, and we are higher being bodies to the plants.
Maybe
Are we not?
Something like that. I mean, the whole higher being bodies is not really our jam. We take that as metaphor and also, a quirk of Gurdjieff's that was his thing.
that was 19th century metaphysics. That's the models that he had to work with. We don't hold it against him.
Ethers and all of that. So,
Hydrogens.
Okay, John says, isn't everything stored in the subconscious? Nothing is waste, but a potential.
Yeah, I don't know if everything is stored in the subconscious or the unconscious mind. People have suggested that. I'm dubious of everything being stored there, but all of the strong impressions are stored there for sure. I have memories that go back to when I was not yet 2 years old that were very, very much strong awakening impressions that I can recall today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I couldn't tell you what I ate for breakfast. And even as a hypnotist who's done a lot of age regression stuff, uh, the problem with that is that there's no way to check. You can't falsify it. You know what that means?
Yes.
Yeah, so I like to think that we have memory of many things. I don't know if it's everything. And people can argue about that, but it's a metaphysical argument. Until we can find some way to falsify it, we're stuck with the metaphysics.
Thank you for that question.
Yeah.
Okay, where are we?
We are at the third level of impressions and the second conscious shock.
Yes.
Or, as I like to say, do not email somebody while you're really pissed off at them. Hark. Chris. Chris is here. So one of the big problems with life is that life contains people, and people contain opinions, and this creates friction. Gurdjieff prescribed something for this. Gurdjieff loved to create friction and then have people be present with their negative emotions and digest them. There's a Sufi term for this, mujāhadah an-nafs, the war against the ego, and ṣabr. Ṣabr means patience, endurance, to fully experience and bear the weight of an emotion without turning it into a mechanical behavior. And if you can do that, the heat becomes fuel. And this is interesting because on the scale of energies, if there is a scale of energy somewhere, heat is like the lowest, right? It's mostly waste energy. Heat is what you get as a waste byproduct of higher energies. But heat can be turned into a fuel. Think about this. You're driving down the highway and you get to a huge traffic jam. One of these nightmares that Los Angeles used to have all the time. And your engine's overheating. And you can either get really angry or you can get out, pop the hood, and use the heat of the engine to boil water to make your tea. Can go either way. So this says that when you have friction, you can either blow it off as negative behavior, and it's not negative emotion, it's negative behavior.
Detrimental behavior. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Or you can allow that heat to be the fuel that keeps you awake. So the most interesting energy that human beings produce is atomic energy, right? We can blow shit up like nobody else. And in life, there are not very many creatures that deal with explosives of one sort or another. There's the bombardier beetle, right, which explodes jets of caustic gas out of its butt. And there's humans who split atoms and create big bangs. Now, the other thing that we do besides blowing shit up and making wastelands that are unusable for several thousand years, uh, is that we create energy using atomic energy. You know how we do that? You know how an atomic power plant works? It's really simple. You have this fissionable material and you don't let it explode, but you get it kind of near exploding. And it produces heat. And you use that heat to boil water, to create steam, to turn turbine blades, which then create electricity.
Hmm.
So we use this incredibly dangerous energy to boil water. It's weird when you think about it.
So it's like nuclear hydropower.
Yeah.
Hmm. Interesting.
And it's not very efficient. Most of the heat is wasted, but you can do it. Produces energy. So what if emotion could be used in the same way to produce energy rather than blow it off? So think about what that looks in our modern milieu. Here we are. Somebody says something wrong on the internet. What happens? It's not a rhetorical question. What happens?
Yeah,
Somebody says something wrong on the internet.
what do you do? What happens in you? Jill says reactions.
Oh, yes. Think about the response you get in your body when somebody says something wrong on the internet.
Um, John says negative reaction.
Yeah. And Aksha says tension, which is what happens. It's a more refined description.
Yeah.
You feel maybe tightness in your chest, heat in your body. Literally, you start heating up. If you were to look at yourself in the mirror and that thing that you saw by that person who is completely and utterly wrong that's pissing you off, you're going to flush. The capillaries at the surface of your skin are going to open up to shed the heat of the reactions that are going on inside of you. Your breathing is going to change. All of these things, subtle or gross. Yes, there will there will be holding of breath.
Adrenaline says Mert.
Yes.
Says clenching. Jill says holding your breath. Yes. I will say heart rate increase.
Yeah, blood pressure goes up. All of this stuff. And because it's the internet, you have none of the societal tools that we have learned for the last 6,000 years to keep us from going completely off.
Yeah, the things that help us keep the peace while in proximity to one another. The internet poses a challenge because of the lack of proximity, the real lack of proximity.
So here's
How,
where the second shock comes in.
yes, let's,
Instead of dashing off that scathing comment that you initially wanted to do, or sitting there thinking that you are so much better than the other person, uh, you include the sensation. You widen your intention to your whole body and hold the impulse and remain present. not repression. You are not letting the heat cook you into something finer. Well, yeah, you actually are letting the heat cook you into something finer. One rule I like is if you're going to email somebody and there's some heat behind it, put it off for a day.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, we're going to look at the Sufi parallels.
Mushtaq, can you make me a host, please?
Did
Before
I not make you a host? What's wrong with me?
Yeah.
There you are.
Yeah, John mentions the anonymity. Yes, I was going to add that we're not looking people in the eye, we're not seeing their bodies, so we have utter anonymity even when we're, you know, even when we have our name there, we're still a total stranger to people. All right, thank you for making me a host.
Sure.
I'm gonna mute you, John, if that's okay. Yeah. Okay,
Okay.
onward.
So, the first food. Let me tell you, let me explain to you
Explain.
what it can be like if you were in a Sufi house and you were going to have dinner with the sheikh. They would roll out a long cloth on the floor. In Farsi, they call it sofre. And there are sparklies happening on my screen. I didn't do.
I think that means someone appreciates something you said.
Yeah. So on this usually a white cloth, though not necessarily. The servers will bring out food before the people are even sitting down, and they will place the food along the table, along the sofre. And they will not just plop it down, they will put it down so that it is aesthetically pleasing and that everybody sitting around this little cloth table can experience all of the food. And then they will take salt cellars and put several on the table. Then all of the people eating will come into the dining area and sit around the table. And then the sheikh will come in and everybody stands up because that's what they do in traditional cultures. And then when he sits down, everybody else sits down. Nobody's touched anything yet. Nobody's talking. They are just experiencing the food, the room, and each other. Then the sheikh will reach out and take a pinch of salt and taste it. Everybody else does the same, does it at that time. And then somebody will serve the sheikh and everybody else will serve themselves whatever's there. And they will eat. And there will be no talking. And everybody will have attention on themselves, attention on the room, and attention on the teacher. Because the teacher is choreographing this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody is eating and attending. And at a certain point, the sheikh will stop eating. And when he stops, everybody stops. And usually he'll say something like illallah, which is literally means but God. And it's a sign of we have come to the end of that. Then everybody there will indulge in some silent dhikr with breath. And you have to pay attention because you follow the sheikh's breath. That means you have to have enough attention on the outside world to be able to breathe with him. And this will go on for maybe 5-10 minutes. And then he'll again say, Illallah, and he will bow to his food and he'll stand up, and everybody stands up with him because nobody sits when the sheikh stands. And he will file out and everybody will go with him, usually into the next room where the servers will bring tea, lots of tea in little clear glasses. And most of the time, either musicians will start playing or someone will start reciting from the divans, like Divani Hafez or Divani Shamsi Tabriz, or they will read from the Divani Hikmat, any of these things. And this allows you to take impression. You have the flavor of the tea, the aroma of the tea, the people in the room with you, the beautiful music, the wonderful poetry, all happening at the same time that you get to be conscious with. So a meal at a Sufi house becomes an example of exactly what we're talking about, step by step, in some Sufi houses. Does this make sense?
Yep.
So the hardest to understand is the third food. And Sufis say that this has to do with guarding the senses and watchful remembrance. So that impressions are not thieves, but messengers. That's the poetic idea, that the impressions that are given to you can either steal your attention or fuel your intention or attention. And that brings us to the second shock specifically, which is the struggle against the ego, against the mechanical self, and the patience to do it. And we see that in the Sufi meal, because after you eat, what do? You do the least fun thing of the night, which is the dishes. And you apply the same consciousness to the cleanup of the teke as you do to the eating of the meal. And this gets into the Sufis talk about the lataif, the subtle organs of the body. And we've talked about that in other talks, so we don't need to go into it at all here. So there are misunderstandings in this. The first misunderstanding is spiritualizing the first food. So yes, eat consciously, eat thoughtfully, be present, but your salad cannot absolve you of your sins. The first food's virtue is in cleanliness. And this gets into the Sufi idea or the Islamic idea of halal, which is equivalent to the Jewish kosher. Here's a trick. If you're a Muslim and you need to fly someplace where they don't like Muslims, and you're about to order your food and you see the halal meal and you don't want them to know that you eat halal, just order kosher. I have used this many times. Because if you order halal, they're going to like search your luggage 5 times before you get on the plane. But if you order kosher, they ignore you. And who doesn't love lox and bagels? So, another misunderstanding is turning your breath into theater. You do not need a performance-grade breathing practice to function. That's a sign that you need to simplify, not to add cymbals and bells and whistles and all of that kind of stuff.
And don't stress yourself doing it. I know many of us start out when we're given a breath practice going at it 110%. Just tone it down a little bit.
Another misunderstanding is confusing self-remembering with self-watching.
Mm.
You can tell if you're self-watching if you are making commentary about what you're doing. You want a gentle awareness, not a security camera. And one of the biggest problems is transforming do not express negative emotion into repression. The instruction is to digest the energy, not to pretend that you are
You're not trying to become a stereotype, you know?
yeah,
People have this stereotype of a spiritual person who never gets mad, never has any sense of resistance to things. They're always in flow. Let's all call ourselves out on our bullshit right now. That is not real. That is bypassing. So,
yeah. So this can be done in group or by yourself. How many times do you go into a restaurant and see everybody in the restaurant eating and looking at their phone? You can eat alone, put your phone down, be present with the food. Things like that.
and yourself. In that moment, you can be a companion for yourself.
And if you're really present, you can hear what everybody else is talking about, and maybe you'll get some good gossip. So that's it. That's a basic introduction to Gurdjieff's 3-storied food factory and how the Sufis rock it. And in our next retreat, our next in-person retreat, we're going to do, I think, a bit more of the traditional way of serving food and eating it. Not quite so formal, but more formal.
Any questions or thoughts at this point? Or what are some ways that you might take what we've discussed today and perhaps practice it a bit in everyday life. RM says, is writing a story for gratitude a form of impression?
It depends on whether you're awake when you do it. Anything is impression if you're awake.
Yes, Osama.
Yeah, one thought that that came to mind is that when it comes to like food, for example, um, or the way that Mushtaq, how you shared traditionally, what happens in the durga or in the tekke, that in order to go into the breath, you're stopping before you're actually full, right? Like
Yeah.
you don't reach a point of like, okay, I'm full now. Like there's still room and you're stopping there. So in order to even engage with the breathing, which actually feels better on the body. Like for me, when I'm not full, when I'm like stuffed, my body just feels better. My breathing is deeper and better. How does that same thing apply to the impressions? Like yeah. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I'm not sure how to answer it, but it makes complete sense. What can we say about that?
Um, well, what else? Do you have something you want to say in response to what?
Uh, no, I just had a question. I'll just wait
Okay,
until
yeah, hang in there
yeah.
a moment. Um, I I'm not sure if this is accurate, but I'm gonna put out the tentative thought that I wonder if, I mean, I know that I could possibly be awake and aware, but reach a point where I'm feeling overstimulated or like, wow, there's a lot coming in right now. There's a lot to focus on. I would like to go sit in a dark room now alone. So there's a possible answer for you. Hitting that sensory threshold of, okay, I've had a buffet and now I'm gonna go quiet things down now. And actually, if we are awake to that, we're more likely to pick up on that fact that we're feeling like, okay, this is starting to rev something up in me that doesn't feel good.
Yeah, and Jill has a nice thought here, which is leaving room for grace.
Hmm.
I think that is an apt answer.
Yes.
So what else?
What else? Yes. Who did we lose? I'm sad to see them go. They probably had to take off.
Yeah, you got to take off too, pretty quick.
Yeah, in a little bit. Yes. Sorry, what? Oh, go ahead.
No. It's just a really basic question. Can you please give me an example of an impression? I get food. I
Mhm.
get I get the air that we breathe. Can you give me an example?
Right now, this very moment, I want you to first pay attention to your breath for just a second, and then notice the room you're sitting in. What can you notice about the room? Keep paying attention to your breath. Notice the quality of the air in the room, the temperature, how it feels on your skin. Notice the walls around you. And when you have that, notice yourself noticing. Be aware of yourself. And notice how much more vivid the room becomes when you do this. That's an impression.
So that
Thank you.
helps.
Yes.
Great. Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you, Adam.
Everybody has good questions.
Yes. Anyone else have thoughts they want to share? Yes, Safsha.
You mentioned emotions. Are emotions impressions?
No, emotions are emotions. An
Okay.
emotion is a feeling that you have in your body and a story that you tell yourself about that feeling.
Mm.
So you feel tightness in your chest and you say, "Oh my God, I'm afraid." But another person feels the same tightness and says, "Oh my God, I'm excited." So the story that you tell yourself about the feeling gives you the emotion.
I suppose you could, the impression could be the sensation of it. You know, you're sitting with the sensations that are in the body that we then label as an emotion.
Yeah, because you were saying to digest the energy um, rather than repress it. So it sounded like emotions running through the body,
Yeah.
and like working with like women especially, the repression of that energy, for example, anger, causes so many problems in the body. And I was just wondering if this has got anything to do with that when you repress that energy, it turns into something negative like chronic symptoms. And when you learn to not express it, but digest it, integrate it, then it can turn into art or, you know,
Or just
something else positive.
relaxation.
Or yeah, or just allowing your body yourself to feel that emotion.
Yeah. The most common physical symptom of repression is tension.
Yeah.
And if you don't repress, you will not hold chronic tension quite so easily. And if you
Yeah.
don't hold chronic tension quite so easily, you're 10 years younger in 5 minutes.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you, Afsha. Who have we not heard from yet?
Well, we
Good.
haven't heard from Palin, but if we try and make her talk, she's going to put salt in our sugar bowl.
Or
Related
should.
to that.
Okay,
Um,
yeah.
so I mean, on a few different levels. One of them was when you were talking about food and the TV dinners, and Wells' comment about having all of the TV reruns during a very important time. That struck me. But also just my own upbringing, dinner was dinner at the table with the family watching TV.
Ah.
So for me, I'm thinking about, all right, because it's getting close to lunchtime over here. So I'm thinking about, okay, today in like half an hour during lunch, how do I want to approach my meal? So that's part of it. Um, the impressions part was also interesting because the digesting of the experience, and that is still new for me. And Mashak, you know that I've been struggling emotionally lately. And one thing is the self-observation and the self-remembering. So I've noticed that when I really identify with the emotion I'm feeling, that so first I'm identifying with the emotion. I feel something very, very strongly. And then I notice, thanks to all the Tai Chi Bagua practice, I notice that I feel something in the body. Where do I feel it? Sometimes it's in the chest, sometimes it's in the abs, like I'm tightening, I'm squeezing myself to death somewhere. And then I notice the story that comes with that feeling. And then I notice those are two separate things. And then I noticed that, okay, now that I'm noticing they're two separate things, to treat it as an object to observe. And as you mentioned, most of the time, I just relax immediately. That emotion kind of just melts away. And so for me, just this talk as reinforcement's not the right word, but just remembering to keep doing that. And that's the way to digest it rather than repress it or have it explode or something else later.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent. Osama gives you a heart. Wonderful, Palin. Thank you. All right. So, um, Kitty, there's a cat among us.
Kitty.
Um, yeah, who have we not heard from?
For surprisingly, we have not heard from Ian.
Oh my gosh, Ian.
Yeah, it's been unseasonably quiet.
Well, I stayed up way too late the last 2 nights, so I'm kind of tired. But one thing I've been thinking about that I find interesting is the way that you basically say that in order to get an impression, you really have to be awake, which is something I didn't get from my reading of Ouspensky. So I've been thinking about that a little bit, and I think one of the interesting things is that from my perspective, um, we're taking in impressions all the time, and some of them are just not significant, so we instantly forget them, because if we didn't, our brains would just get seriously overloaded. But if we're doing something intentional, like trying to learn something, then there is a process whereby our brains are absorbing the thing we're trying to learn. And to me, that's taking things up a notch. But I think it's certainly correct to say that that learning process is still mechanical. And so I've been trying to think about how to characterize what might be going on in the brain when we're awake and what difference that makes. And I suspect it's to do with engaging more parts of the brain all at once.
Yeah, or a certain part of the brain in a different way.
Yeah, sure.
So, Merton RM, help me out here if I wander off too far. It's good to have doctors here, but they keep you honest. Can't just make shit up. There is a part of the brain called the reticular body, and it's part of the hindbrain, old brain, and its job is to let your conscious mind know the important stuff and filter out that which is uh, less important. Your nervous system is taking in up to 2 million bits of information at any given time. They say it's between 200,000 and 2 million in a day, in any given moment, most of which get blotted out because it would be overwhelming if it wasn't. And people who have the reticular body injured do not have fun. Most of the time they will go into a coma, but if it's a small injury, they just get all sorts of craziness all the time. So This bit of lizard brain does a really good job, does an excellent job, a magnificent job of blocking almost everything out, blocking out more than it needs to, especially for us modern humans, because we are overwhelmed by sensory overload most of the time if you live in the modern world. When we were more engaged with nature, our reticular bodies were more open. They would take in more data and let us know about things that in the modern world it wouldn't. Like, oh, I just heard a twig snap behind me. Maybe I should get ready to run. Things like that. I smell tiger. All of these things get filtered out in the modern world. So part of what happens when you are awake is that you are letting your reticular activating system relax a little bit and let more information through so that you can be more present to this world now. Because otherwise, if it does too good of a job, it withdraws you from the information of your own senses. Does that make sense, Ian? And give you an idea of where you might start looking for the answer to your question, brain-wise?
Yes, sort of.
Hold that thought. I personally am going to have to take off. I have a 12 o'clock obligation. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. It's so good to see you. All of you, including the people I have not seen in such a long time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here.
All right, dear.
All
We
right.
will see you after you have done your thing. And
I'll
you
see you
better
later.
get going.
All right. Wassalama. Bye.
And I'll bring you lunch later.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. You guys are stuck with me now.
Yeah, to come back to that, as you know, I've been starting to learn more about brain architecture and how neurons work. And I've still very early in my journey of getting familiar with all of that. But I do I do find it fascinating just how awesome our mechanical mechanisms are.
Yeah, it's like,
In
who thought of
complexity
this?
and how all of the things work at a chemical level. In fact, one of the videos I watched yesterday was a new one from Sabine Hossenfeld. What's the title? I just found it. It was based on a new scientific paper. It says, our thoughts are very slow and can't be sped up, biologists find. And in fact, that figure you quoted about the number of bits that are coming in was one of the things that she talked about. Whereas our our experience is totally compressed down into a much slower rate of information absorption. I can't remember the exact figures, but
Yeah, and
it's like a massive number of orders of magnitude.
yeah, and that goes to the what we are working on in the time dilation uh, forum.
Yeah, I took a look at that earlier in the week, and then I got busy and I haven't had time
Yeah,
to get
that's
back
okay. I
to
haven't had time to
finishing
write anything there either. That is
it.
a
It
side
it
project.
yeah, it certainly looks very interesting.
So most of the time, we take about 10 frames a second of
Yeah, that's about right.
experience. But we can train ourselves to take up to 40 frames per second of experience. And when we do that, everything slows down. Part of what you get when you're operating at that number, that frame rate, is things seem to move very slowly around you. You have plenty of time to experience everything. And so it's not that we are biologically limited. There is a range, and it has to do with our attention. More attention, higher frame rate. And so what Gurdjieff is asking for is that we increase our frame rate through self-observation, self-remembering, and through the second conscious shock, first and second conscious shocks. And when you do that, you get into a lot of flow state, which is also fun, whether you're a musician or an athlete. Chris is on a roll today.
With the whole RAS, I mean, I had this question come up when I was doing the exercise of pick a chore and be awake during the chore, and then notice how it is when you're awake during the chore. The interesting thing to me was I then moved on to the next chore, and I just went right into mechanical mode.
Yeah.
And then like halfway through that chore, I'm like, oh my God, I've been in mechanical mode. Like during I just like, so the question is like that's not an external stimuli response that came in, right? It wasn't like my RAS had nothing to do with my attending to the fact that
Yeah,
I was
that's
totally.
attention fatigue.
Yeah, and then my question is like what it almost felt like I wasn't even like my will, it wasn't like a conscious choice to be like, I'm going to be awake now. It was just, I sort of was like, whoa, I was just in La La Land.
Yeah.
So, what can you say maybe about that, like that sort of,
That says that
aha.
you are training yourself to be awake. Ouspensky described the same thing in his life, where he would go out and intend to remember himself, do it for a while, then drop into trance, and then an hour later go, holy shit, I have just been cruising on autopilot this whole time. So the fact that you work to be awake reminds you to be awake.
But what the confusing part for me is it feels that I experience it as if it's not my will operating. It feels almost compulsive itself. The
Yeah, you're developing
Pop
a
out of it.
mechanical habit that triggers your awakeness, which is the first step.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and yeah, that's going to happen. That means you are creating a trigger to awaken yourself. And at the same time, you are exercising your attention to make it stronger. Because attention fatigue is a real thing. It is no difference than doing deadlifts. You can only do so many before your body says, that's enough. But the more you do them, the more you work on developing that particular chain of muscular strength, the more you can do it. You develop endurance. And people with great attention are endurance athletes. They're not sprinters. So they're marathoners and ultra marathoners, which is something I just realized. There's going to be a talk in there somewhere. So, any other thoughts, questions, answers? Good jokes, bad jokes?
Dad jokes.
Dad jokes. Yeah, you can make dad jokes now, man. Nope. In that case, I'm going to put us on Brady Bunch mode. Voila. And thank you all for being here. It has been a load of fun. Thank you for putting up with us in our wiseacring. And God willing, we will see you all again next month at this very time for the third Sunday of the month, our other talk, and hopefully sometime in the evening talks. So, wave to everybody, or don't, and we will see you soon.